3, 2, 1, and we're live. Welcome to the show, guys. My name is Jdowns, as you guys might know. I'm here with one of my good friends, Nico, who we've been talking about doing a podcast for weeks now, pretty much. This is something I've wanted to do for a while. I finally have the gear. I finally have the place to start the recording, so we're kind of just here talking about some subjects today. It would mean a lot if you guys could drop a like on the stream or a comment. I do want to say, guys, I am sorry there's no video for this stream. That's something we're going to be getting set up very soon. By episode 15, I bet you'll have video set up. So this is episode 1, or I guess you could even say like episode 0.5. It's not, I mean, it is an official episode, but we're still learning the gist of things, so it's not going to be as optimized as it will be in a few episodes. So give me 7 episodes to get this down, and I think I'll have a very good formula by then. But yeah, I'm just here with Nico. You introduce yourself if you want.
I'm Nico Carre-Smith, and some of you might know me if you know Jdowns. I'm a physics major over at Portland State University, and we're just going to be spitballing today, getting the rhythm of this podcast and seeing really how the procedure of it goes. So if it's a little unstructured, like Jdowns said, just bear with us, and we'll hop into it.
So first and foremost, guys, Nico and I, we both have pretty similar birthdays. We were both born at the late September, early October, and we both just turned 21. Which has me thinking of something I saw earlier. There was actually, Pabst Blue Ribbon, right, Nico?
Yes.
Okay, so beer company. I don't know where they're based in, somewhere in like the South or something, but they actually have a deal going on right now. Mm-hmm. They're selling 99 beers, Nico. Kid this. 99 beers for $50 for $49.99. The fuck? Which is like 50 cents a beer. So that's really that's a great deal in my mind.
Yeah. At the same time, who needs 99 beers? I mean, that's a hell of a deal, but also, one, why 99? And two, I don't know if anyone who's listening to this right now has seen the packaging for those things. It's like a snake. It's like a 10-foot-long box. It's so impractical. We were discussing that a little bit earlier. If you have a sedan or something, it's probably longer than the sedan itself. Being a deal as it is, I don't know how you're going to fit that into your car.
Definitely. And it actually says on the, or they said on their website or something that it takes 2 full-grown men to carry it. That's how heavy it is just in weight. So I can definitely see your concerns about it being unpractical. I think it's more of a gag type thing just to boost sales and just think about all those college boys that are just, let's get a 99.
Yeah. No, and, I just whipped out my fucking calculator here, and there's 12 fluid ounces in a can of Pabst?
Yeah.
So in this fucking box, it's 1,188 fluid ounces of beer.
For $50, kid you that. So if you and a friend, $25 each, that gets you what? What's that divided by 2?
Divided by 2.
That gives you a lot.
594 per. 594 ounces of beer per person.
And think the average 40-ounce beer costs what? Let's just say $4 for a 40-ounce. Yeah. So you're getting I'm talking hundreds of % increase in what you're getting, for your money.
I mean, yeah, I don't really want to work through all the math, but $25 per person? Shit, I'd do that for fucking 48 beers. Yeah.
Nico, I have a quick question as a kind of a segue for you. Do you think more women have iPhones than men, and more men usually have Androids, or would you say that a lot of girls have Androids just as frequently as men?
It would probably depend on socioeconomic status. I would say at university, people, from what I've gathered looking around, people tend to have more iPhones, and women and men actually in that case tend to have more iPhones. Now, getting into differences in economic status, I think Androids simply are all around more affordable. So it depends on where you're looking, at college, you're probably going to see a bunch of kids with iPhones, and I don't know the difference between men or women in that case. I think it's pretty equal, to be honest. But it just depends on economic availability for that person because, back when I got my first phones, I had a pretty janky-ass, Huawei or some... No, not Huawei. That's a Chinese brand.
That's a jank brand. You cannot... Huawei is pretty sketch, boys. I cannot lie.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Huawei. It was something even more sketch. It started with a K, but yeah, it really just depends on where the funds are at,
Agreed. See, it's interesting because you started off on a Android, and now you have I would say you're pretty pro Apple in most regards. I started off on an Apple device, and now I'm pretty pro Android. And I think there's definitely differences, but For example, a big one I always bring up, the Snapchat debate. Like, Snapchat actually made it worse for Android users on purpose. I don't know why you would develop something worse for a certain category of users, but that's the problem I have with the Android discriminatory system, is that people look automatically like, oh, he has an Android. Mm-hmm. You know, you text someone, you want a blue bubble. You want that. You don't want a green. Oh, he has a green. Like, who is this asshole with a green bubble?
Yeah, and that's another thing I've always thought was kind of silly, is people like almost discriminate based on phone. It's like if you're texting someone, like you said, and they have a blue bubble or a green bubble, it's kind of like, oh, he's on Android, you know? And then the whole camera thing, it's like the camera quality is debatably worse. But honestly, I was looking at a Galaxy phone the other day, and one of the newer models, last year's model, I think, whatever that was, S10.
Yeah, the S10.
S10. And they have a really awesome like autofocusing feature on the Galaxy that maybe I just don't know how to use it on Apple, but it was really impressive, and I couldn't really describe it, but it was able to adjust and refocus really quickly, in fact, more quickly than my iPhone, but like I said, I don't know how to completely use the iPhone camera.
I mean, I would argue that Android cameras are just on par as iPhones, or even better. However, it's like the things like the frame rate and stuff that just look so sketch on them. You know what I mean? Like, you look at an iPhone camera, it's beautiful, like 60 FPS.
Yeah.
You look at an Android cam and just something's not right there. I don't know what it is, but something is not right. And so I think Apple generally, or most of the time, has a pretty strong track record when it comes to releasing reliable devices. Mm-hmm. Android does too, but you start to get into head-ass Android shit, like the Galaxy Fold. Like, do we need a folding phone? I don't think so. Like, Android has had a lot of projects that have failed, so to speak. Like Google Glass, for example, never really made its way out to the public. But I think that more phones need to start implementing new things. Like, it used to be every year you'd have something new, like a fingerprint scanner. Next year, an iris scanner. It's like now we need to start making the move into like AR and VR into phones, and like implementing newer technologies into phones.
Yeah, the tricky part about that would be finding some sort of medium to connect to the phone to sort of display the augmented reality component. So the phone would need to like come with some sort of headset or something, or glasses. Glasses would be an easier medium, but I'm not sure if our computational technology, at least on a market level, is there yet, or if that stuff is really being released, if you kind of know what I'm saying.
Definitely. And just think about how many, it can definitely be looked at as a distraction for some, but I would say it would be an overall beneficial thing, because say you're driving, you're wearing some sort of headset or glasses. You can now have like an augmented arrow saying turn left here. You know exactly what street to turn on. You can have like a track, like picture like a track of your route on the ground that you follow. And I think that would be a lot better than like looking down at your phone for that. I think like maps and like a lot of navigational things could be really improved with AR.
Oh yeah, easily. Having those digital components kind of displayed within your immediate reality is huge, and it's fucking cool as fuck. Not gonna lie, it's like you're in what was I thinking of?
It's like you're in like Star Wars or some shit with like the tech.
Yeah, but there's one film I was thinking of specifically where Tom Cruise.
Mission Impossible?
No, it's Spielberg made it.
Spielberg made it.
Yeah, did Spielberg made it? Memento, not Memento. Gosh.
Oblivion?
No, the one where like the machines can predict crimes happening before they happen.
It's not Edge of Tomorrow, is it?
No, not Edge of Tomorrow. Gosh, it's like
it's Jack Reaper, is it?
It's one of his most famous films, and it's really fucking slipping me right now. Holy shit.
I'm trying. Are you sure it's not Minority Report?
Minority Report.
Yeah,
that's what it was. No, okay. Yeah, no, it almost like I'm thinking something like Minority Report, where he's doing his fucking Tai Chi with the computers and shit, moving them around, sliding them, expanding them. I think that would be really utile within the real world. And I don't know if anyone remembers that demo that Microsoft had when they initially announced HoloLens. That was cool as fuck.
Well, the cool thing about HoloLens is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was started off as a military experiment, was it not? Or they wanted to implement it for soldiers and stuff?
From what I understand, it started out like being marketed something at like E3 or some shit to the public, and then it almost made a transition to military equipment. They were going to use it as like sort of a heads-up display for military personnel, and it would display like something like ammo count. Almost think of like a video game heads-up display. It would display vitals or some shit. Necessary information for while they're out there. It's just readily available.
I've actually gotten to try AR, and it's absolutely amazing. I mean, I think think of like a flight control center. They could do so much with that kind of technology, looking at like 3D maps of planes and stuff. Like that technology is really, I don't know. Like I just recently got some Snapchat spectacles, which are pretty much like smart glasses, and I think that glasses are the future of. Like I think the next step is going to be some sort of glasses.
Yeah, we'll make our way to glasses and then eventually come up to like contact lenses or something, and from there, I don't know, just retinal implants or something like that, looking really far into the future. But I think that sort of tech is going to come a long way. Either way, we're coming up to our first segment here, it looks like.
So, Nico, I have a question for you. This is just diving straight into science. I don't know if you can answer this.
Okay.
But what color is an atom, Nico? Because aren't atoms actually smaller than photons, which is what gives something the color, right? So what color is an atom? Is it clear?
Atoms, as far as we do not have a color. And not all photons aren't bigger than atoms. Atoms vary in size depending on the electromagnetic forces between the electrons, protons, neutrons, all that shit. But atoms really are what generate color. If an electron loses energy, it will emit a photon and drop to a lower subshell. And that photon it emits will emit in the form of color. And certain wavelengths of photons will generate certain colors.
Interesting. I don't know if you heard this, and don't quote me on this, Nico. I could be fucking bullshitting. This could be some bullshit shit on Google. Because there's a lot of that shit out there, boys. But I read the other day that I believe it's called the USSF, United States Space Force. And like, the USAS, the Air Force?
Yes.
There's now a new force, which is the Space Division. That's what I read.
Did that become a thing? Like, was that started? I thought that was just kind of I knew Trump was serious about it, but I never knew it had actually been synthesized or created.
It says legislation to create a Space Force in 2020 is still possible, but by no means... I guess they're trying to say it's probably not going to happen. But I think that, I'm not at all a Trump supporter, don't get me wrong, boys. But I do think that voicing space concerns are very important. And look at the military's budget per year. We're talking $500 billion, Nico. Like that's, I think I think NASA's budget is something like $10 million per year. In the U.S. military's is $500 billion, rising. I actually think it's closer to $600 billion. So that kind of funding going into space would be absolutely amazing as far as the advancements we'd make.
Yeah, and within our current time period, we will never see that amount of funding go towards space, unfortunately. There's a reason there's that much money poured into the military, and that's for political reasons. But should we say that we get that much money going towards the space administration, that'd be fucking awesome.
You have to think, Nico, it's like, I don't think there's anything even more political than trying to look at space. I mean, if our goal is ultimate power and enforcement through the military, why not look to space where you can remotely send missiles and things from what's it called? Low Earth orbit. I forgot what it's called. But if you could send stuff from low orbit to the Earth, you are maximizing your propulsion, and you're not even having to burn a fuel to get that there because you're able to just have it re-enter at a certain point and track the trajectory and hit your target.
So are you talking about like using kinetic-based objects falling from low orbit to impact with the ground?
Yes. Like, isn't there actually something called a kinetic rod or something? Or I forgot what it's called. It's like a rod.
Yeah, as far as I understand, those are actually banned by the United Nations. Use of any low-orbit weapons is strictly prohibited because the forces of kinetic rod they're somewhere up there with a nuclear bomb. There's obviously not as much fallout, nowhere near as much because there's not any nuclear process happening, but the amount of energy from something of that size traveling at that speed towards the Earth is ridiculous when it hits the ground. It fucks shit up. So I'm pretty sure the United Nations has banned all that.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not a guy advocating for space weaponry or anything or weapons in space. However, I think that is a segue into just funding for space in general. And I think people are more, like the American government, most people in general are more willing to say, oh, yep, if we're doing space for military, then it's more important than space for research. And that's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, so I see. Trying to get people on board behind it and for a reason to sort of get into the space arena, which it would be nice. And honestly, it would spark a lot of controversy. But if we could find some sort of medium for getting more people on the space board, that would be, or the space bandwagon is a better way to say it. That'd be fucking awesome.
This is way off topic. Don't get me wrong, Nico. But there's a politician named Andrew Yang. He's running for the 2020 election. I'm not sure if you know of him. Great guy. Seriously, he's an entrepreneur. One of his main motives in his campaign is that he wants to give every single United States adult a minimum of $1,000 budget per month, just free money. And I'm not talking welfare. I'm not talking a sort of food stamp system. I'm talking actual money that just gets deposited into your account, $1,000 for every single adult a month.
That would be awesome, obviously. Where would that come from?
It says here on pbsnews.com by Dan Cooney, by the way. Got the sources in there. It says Andrew Yang, essentially, so there's something called a VAT tax, I guess. It's similar to a sales tax or other consumer taxes. It's a percentage on the price that gets added onto the goods. Like, say you buy like a drink, they're going to add a little on. Mm-hmm. Through that tax, it would be able to fund, I guess, the $1,000 a month per person.
Okay. So there's some sort of tax in place on goods?
I mean, I guess so, but you know, you look at policies like Trump's, he's trying to lower the tax of like businesses and stuff. You know what I mean? He wants, like, specifically, like, think of like, let's just bring up like Bezos, for example, Jeff Bezos, you know, like Amazon and shit, that huge company, right? If they just paid 1%, because I forgot exactly how it works, but usually the smaller the business, you'll have a flat rate tax. Then you get to a certain point of richness where it's like they start to tax you more because they're like, fuck you, you have so much money. But Trump's trying to reverse that and be like, no, like we worked for our money. We don't need to get taxed more.
Yeah, and personally, I don't agree with that. But, I mean, examining the tax in relation to everyone getting $1,000 a month, if that was going through some sort of everyday tax on general goods and basic transactions, I think that would be beneficial, but I don't know if that would be necessarily possible. I have zero information on economics and those trends, so I really couldn't tell you.
And sorry to go off on that political tangent. It's just, this is all kind of going back to the space topic that I was having, that I think the idea of funding is a very, I hate to say dull sword, but people don't necessarily understand what's possible in the realms of funding through taxes, through all these multi-billion-dollar companies. You know, there's some companies that are out of proportion with, you know, they have more money than they could ever spend. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. It's, I think it has a lot to do with the implementation, of these taxes in the right, correct sense. And I think that, I'm not saying we all need $1,000 a month. That's going to make people lazy in my mind, honestly. Like, that's honestly that might lazy people out. However, I think when it comes to like housing and like, maybe it's not $1,000 to spend on anything. Like, maybe you can't buy like brews with it, but maybe it's like $1,000 to spend towards like shit you're going to need, like utilities and shit.
Yeah, I definitely think having some sort of direct purpose for it would be really important, like almost food stamps, because you want to make sure people are not just abusing it for personal habits, because that's just going to happen. But if we can guarantee that those things were going towards basic needs, then honestly, that'd be great. I don't think everyone needs to have it. I think that should go just towards the lower income bracket, to be honest. Everyone doesn't need $1,000. Give it to the people who need it most, and make sure that whatever it's being used for is obviously utile. But shit, for the middle class, who needs it?
And I agree. I definitely agree. And I think that it would be really, I guess you could say, beneficial to the lower class individuals, but the people that are already making a good amount of money aren't going to see, they're going to be like, I might be losing more money in tax than I actually would be gaining by this $1,000 increase.
Yeah, and that's another thing I was trying to bring up earlier, but I couldn't really articulate it. Like, how do people know that they're really getting like their worth out of the taxes they're paying in return of this $1,000? Also, that's not a very specific number, but I feel like it would have to be a more arbitrary number at first, because $1,000 is an interesting place to settle on.
Agreed. And I think that 1,000 in today's day and age can seem like a lot of money to people, but honestly, it's like, Nico, I think I'm unemployed, and I think I've spent $1,000 in the last month. It's only 1,000 if you think about it. So I think people have a very like dissonant view of money, because they think that, like, I think money is very like I guess you could say it's very perspectival based. Like if you had that's not even a word, I don't think. But if you have $1,000 in your wallet, and like someone gives you a $20 bill, you're not going to value that $20 very much because you're like, oh, I have 1,000. But when you're on your last $40, that 20 is like very important.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's a good point. $1,000 really isn't that much money. So were we to be giving everyone $1,000 for some sort of purpose, that might be a good number to settle on. I can see what you're saying there.
As you can see, this podcast, we're still rough. We're still rusty on these kind of topics, but I do think that like we're 30 minutes into the episode. I think we're doing pretty damn swell. I don't know.
Yeah. I really want to thank everyone who happened to tune into this draft if we decide to release it or whatnot. Thank you for putting up with this bullshit. We really just decided to one day hop on and just make a podcast, We had been thinking about this for a while. We had really thrown around the ideas with our good buds. And getting into the moment, you realize it's a little harder than you thought. Coming up with these sort of discussion points and also making sure you have the right educational information, it's a huge responsibility. And that sort of weight weighs on you in the moment. So we really want to thank you for bearing with us in this process.
I think that, like this conversation in particular might be focusing around more scientific, sides, more political things. But I don't want you guys to think that this is some educational show, because this is very much not. We might talk about some opinions and shit, but I don't want you guys to tune into this as like a nightly news. This is more like, let's just discuss some shit. Like I'm going to have Riley, Rizzy's Pharmacy, on the show very soon here. We're going to be talking about clothing and all sorts of stuff. So that's going to be a whole different conversation. I hate to be this guy. I've been listening to some Alex Jones and stuff. I mean, I'm not deep in, now, which is actually interesting because Alex Jones is a part of the Trump administration.
Yes?
Yeah, that literally, I said the same thing that blew my mind. Alex Jones is one of the head media managers of the Trump organization. So it's very interesting to me that he's friends with a guy like Trump. But to be fair, Trump's friends with many people you wouldn't expect, like Kanye West, for example. Which, speaking of, he just dropped a very, I wouldn't say an amazing album. Like I'm not, I don't want to criticize Kanye, but I wouldn't say Kanye's newest album was necessarily received in the best possible light that it could have, just because of the religious implications.
And he's always been about controversy, and I think that is partially intentional. Ooh, excuse me. But I think he's kind of trying to write his own narrative in the eyes of the public. Like, I don't know if you've seen this. I posted this on Snapchat the other day, but this image of like the phases of Kanye.
Oh, that's like the Yeezus. That's like the Yeezys phase. That's
that's the beginning, and then it moves for like in that order. So if you see, he's kind of like trying to almost write his own story to everyone, and all of his albums are kind of a history of his progression as a person. And I think he's more interested in telling that story than really focusing on the music as the content. Maybe the music speaks for itself, but most people know that around Dark Twisted Fantasy was the peak of like his musical quality, and now the rest of it is just kind of examining the character of Kanye, and I think he knows that.
Very good points made there. I really do think that I would argue that Graduation and College Dropout were peak of Kanye. I mean, I know that's early Kanye, but Graduation is such an amazing album, and I'm talking the production. It actually sounds like music. Like some albums sound, and no, like I love Travis Scott, great artist, but a lot of his stuff sounds like noise to me. Where like Kanye shit sounds like music.
Yeah, Kanye has a lot of like he's actually a great producer. Like you can see all the little nuances he puts into his songs to really give it that fullness, especially in like albums like Graduation and Dark Twisted Fantasy, and even songs that are like as simple as Runaway. He really just like beefed it. I don't know how he put that much weight and emotion into it, but he really just made songs like that pop. And that's one of the great things about Kanye is he's been able to kind of take his own sound with this gospel-y sort of new age ambiguous genre of hip-hop, and he's been able to bolster it in a way that no one really has been able to. Travis Scott borrowed from his kind of like weird auto-tune moany thing from his Dark Twisted Fantasy thing, and I think that's kind of what got him off the ground, and he took it to like the creepy carnival vibe. But Kanye has another way of just kind of just flexing his not flexing is a bad word, bolstering his own poeticism in his own way.
Very good point, guys. And that's going to take us to break number 2. Absolutely amazing conversation. We'll see you guys in 35 seconds. Going back to that Kanye thing, Nico, I see a lot of parallels actually between Kanye and Travis. It's actually interesting you brought that up because I think that Travis, in very many ways, I don't want to say he's in a graduation phase that Kanye was in. I feel like Travis is in kind of that dark, twisted fantasy, almost sort of. You said twisted carnival or something earlier, or like dark carnival,
like creepy carnival almost. He's kind of taken that, like, you know, at the end of Runaway when he kind of was like doing that into the mic for like a minute, and he's like humming the whole orchestration of the song. I feel like Travis was sitting down listening to that, and he's just like, that's my sound that I want. And then he took that and he bolstered it into his own genre. I use the word bolstered a lot. He took that and he turned it into like a creepy carnival vibe, you know? Like if you listen to gosh, what the hell was one of his first projects that he released? It was that one album.
Days Before Rodeo.
Days Before Rodeo was like his official project, but there was something before that. It was like Owl or some shit. I know people are probably like, what? Owl? But he had that one song where he's like, one hand, I'm a dick, I'm a motherfucking monster. You know?
Oh,
and it was like really creepy and like sort of Nine Inch Nails-y.
No, yeah, see, that's a good comparison, like the Nine Inch Nails thing. Because like, I feel like Travis, it's rap, but at the end of the day, it's almost like rock. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? It's like he's like a rock star kind of. And like, I feel like I went to a Travis Scott concert. I saw him live for the Astroworld tour, actually, here in Portland. Right. And great show. Don't get me wrong. He has a great stage energy. I just think that, and I don't know the situation, but based on what I've seen, I think Kylie has been holding him back as an artist, personally. And I feel like Kylie is one of those, like, look at me, I'm a flexer, I have a Juul, I have White Claws, like one of those, like, and nothing, don't get me wrong, boys, there's nothing against Claws. Actually, I drank a fucking 12 of Claws the other night, and I don't want to just switch the subject to White Claws, but I need to fucking ask you this, Nico. Why the fuck are White Claws so expensive? They're fucking $17 for a 12-pack.
I think it's demand. There's like a shortage of White Claws, if I understand correctly. I remember hearing about that. There's like an actual national shortage of White Claws because they're so high in demand.
That's like, I almost feel like it's like the Juul like epidemic. Like I can see, like, how can you ban Juul? There's so many other flavored tobacco things. There's so many other things, but I feel like it's gonna get to a point with White Claw where like they have to be banned.
I don't even know about that unless like the youth starts to obviously get a hold of it more and like more frequently than other alcohol, and then like older people see that or apparently see that. It doesn't even not necessarily have to be true, but like let's say parents around the nation start catching their kids with like White Claws and they're passing out and ending up in the hospitals and like having to get their stomachs pumped all the time and shit, and that could just be kids getting drunk off anything, and I don't think that frequency will change much unless the new generations decide to be rowdy as fuck. But let's say they associate that with the White Claw name, then it would turn into that, yeah, because, I mean, what? A few kids die from vaping-related illnesses and whatnot, and then as much as Juul is actually kind of a fucked company, everyone turns to Juul and is like, it's their fault, which it really isn't, because from the cases we've heard about, these people were using sort of augmented setups and devices to administer whatever the fuck they were smoking, you know. They were rigging it with THC carts and things and other vaping products that aren't necessarily regulated. And that was causing some illnesses. But nonetheless, Juul is pretty fucking responsible for marketing an entire accessible product to a whole generation of kids that go as young as like 13 and 14. That's ridiculous. And it's administering so much nicotine to them. It's like, what the fuck? You know, I mean, that's just me, and I probably sound old as fuck saying that, but hell, it really is ridiculous if you think about how young kids are intaking these sort of things now.
No, very, very great point there. I agree with most of those points. And I think that, you know, Juul has, you know, they have been proven to been advertising, I guess, towards youth through the use of flavored products, you know, mint, mango, all these different pod flavors that have since been banned for the most part. Mint is still on a temporary hold, but mango banned. Fruit medley banned. All these flavors are banned. But that's my entire logic in this whole situation, Nico, is that if you're going to ban things off of flavors, what a better example of a flavor targeting thing than White Claw? Like, White Claw specifically targets those who don't like the conventional beer, or they don't like the conventional hard liquor. And they're going after these flavors, like these really fruity, vibrant, like colorful seltzer flavors that kids would just love, I bet. And going back to the Juul thing, it's like, you're right, Nico. I quit tobacco. I quit juuling because it's actually bad for you. And kids have died. You're right. Kids have died from lung collapses. But however, kids have also died from alcohol. I think it was, I don't know what university it was. Earlier this week, in fact, someone, I believe in a frat, died from over drinking.
No. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. That happens a lot. But in terms of that, yeah, you're totally right. Drinking-related deaths are much, much, much more frequent than these vaping-related deaths. It's really a huge problem within college culture, I'd say. But lost my train of thought a little bit.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, if the argument with the Juul debate is the flavoring, why is that not being applied to, like, brew as well? And, like I think, like, that's bullshit for them to, like, there's no such thing as tobacco flavor. Like, there is, but that's still an artificial flavor. You know what I mean? There's no such thing as menthol flavoring. That's still artificial. So why is Juul able to keep menthol and tobacco on the shelves, but they have to ban mint, which is all the same glycerin with just slightly variations in the taste? That doesn't really make sense to me.
And I think that's because vaping is such a new thing for a lot of people in the U.S., not necessarily for the younger generation, because obviously they grew up with this kind of coming into their lives. But in the eyes of the public, vaping it's an unknown to a lot of people. The science of it, and even though, like you were saying, really it's just variations of a glycerin, people don't know that. And they associate vaping with, like, sort of unknown chemicals and, like, sort of these weird implications of using the device and potential side effects that no one knows about. People have been drinking since God knows when. Like, people have been drinking throughout history. So as a society, we're very comfortable with the idea. Be that flavor. We know that flavor or not, your alcohol is alcohol. There's an amount of alcohol in concentration by volume in some sort of container, and that is ultimately what you have to worry about. Flavor or not, you will always be getting the same amount of, well, I guess you can say, detriments to your health based on the alcohol by volume. Flavor is not a variable in that. In these cases, there are a lot of producers who have, like, made bootleg versions of cartridges where that stigma is being associated now with the flavor in some sense, when really it is someone producing these really fucking sketchy cartridges that have who knows what additives in them. So the public has grasped onto the idea of flavor being a key identifier of danger, almost like certain flavors, or they have these potential side effects and things, which is silly because really it is just a variation, like you were saying. But it's like most things, it's really just a misunderstanding.
The reason why I even brought up the whole vaping debate is that it's something that, it's a measure coming up in the state of Oregon, at least. I think 17 U.S. states are talking about banning it. I don't know exactly the numbers, so don't quote me. But it's interesting to me because how can, in, like, Juul, you have to give Juul credit. I mean, they're a goddamn genius company. I mean, think about it. They had people hooked on that shit. And I'm not going to lie. I would hit a Juul and, like, that was a very nice tap. And, like, I'm not going to, like, don't get me wrong. Cartridges are nice. Like, people bring up the dab cartridge issue. And, like, after just turning 21, I don't actually use cartridges very often. I've never owned a pen, but it's something that I do want to get into. But I'm very skeptical about cartridges, almost more so than Juul.
And I think you have a good reason to be more skeptical about those cartridges, because a lot of people have been having almost like these third-party fairs, I guess you could say, like oil cartridge fairs, where they come together and they all sell their, like, sort of bootleg ass products for a discounted price. That's the draw in, is these things they're a lot cheaper than your standard cartridge, which can go for like $45 for a half gram in the extrema of things, at least in Oregon. I'm sure it's even worse in other states, but no one wants to pay that because it's really not super efficient. And if you can get oil, which is ultimately a little more efficient than smoking flour, if you have a gram cartridge, that's going to last you longer than having an eighth of flour or something, or maybe even a quarter, depending on how much you smoke. So really the draw on is just like that low price of that shit. And people are really just trying to find a scapegoat. Juul is a good scapegoat because really it is a bad epidemic. You have all these like 14 to 16 beyond year old kids. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt if there's 12-year-olds. I didn't know, so I didn't want to overestimate the extrema, but you have a lot of kids just shooting retarded amounts of nicotine up into their fucking lungs. Like,
I mean, we're talking like each pod, I believe, is equal to a pack of cigarettes, I think, as far as the nicotine. And there's 4 pods, so that's like 4 packs of cigarettes. That's fucked. My whole problem, and we can wrap up this Juul thing, my whole problem with the Juul thing was this, Nico. It's that if you're going to ban one of something, ban everything. You can't choose what colors you want to ban or choose what flavors. That's bullshit to me. I think if you're going to ban it, it's banned. If it's not banned, there's all flavors. Mm-hmm. And unless we can accurately prove that mint is worse for you than tobacco, or prove that maybe these flavors have like some sort of additives that somehow give it the flavor that fuck your lungs even worse. Like if that's the case, then sure. But I don't know if there's really evidence for that. I haven't seen evidence for that or heard it, so I don't know. Anyways, aside from the Juul topic, they are thinking about legalizing psilocybin in the state of Oregon, I believe. As I don't know if it would be medicinal or just recreational, but they're looking about legalizing mushrooms, essentially.
Yeah, and I think it would probably be more medicinal at first, just how cannabis was, which is reasonable, because really the only thing we're trying to reap from this is medicinal value. That's what we're saying now. It will most definitely probably work its way into the recreational field. But I think it's a great idea. I was actually spitballing with this guy on Reddit earlier today about the medicinal value of controlled amounts of psilocybin and how that has helped veterans overcome like Vietnam trauma and things like that.
Right.
And I really think it would be a great thing for their medicinal therapy in general.
Agreed. And I haven't done crazy amounts of research, but I do know there are beneficial factors when it comes to PTSD, coping with anxiety, that kind of stuff. But I also feel like it's such a fine, like, I don't think it's very quantifiable. Like someone could get drunk, right? And you're going to be like, okay, there's alcohol, their liver takes this many hours to process it, and it's very black and white. Like, you know what's happening. I feel like when it comes to psychedelics, the brain activity can vary from person to person so drastically that we can't necessarily pinpoint medicinal use.
So if I get what you're saying we can't really define what medicinal is in that case because the effects of the drug are so potent. Can I get a confirmation on that?
That's pretty much exactly what I'm saying. And just to add on to that real quick, not even that they're so potent, just they're so fluctuative between person to person. I mean, one person can have an amazing trip, one person might not trip at all.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what doses you're working with, someone's going to trip no matter what. 'Cause everyone's built with the same receptors and general anatomy. But I get what you're saying. Those doses could affect people on a widely, various scale. Going back to high school shenanigans, we've seen how the same dose of shrooms can impact people seemingly like planets away. They can be planets away from each other in their experiences, and moment to moment it could really change. I think if we're going to define a medicinal dose, it's probably going to be somewhere around half an eighth or lower, probably lower because half an eighth is really psychoactive still. Yeah. Like I don't think the average person will walk into a clinic looking to like remedy their trauma with half an eighth of mushrooms, because that's still like a 6-hour event roughly of not intense, but notable hallucinations and notable like emotional, I don't want to say distress, but emotional happenings.
Very good point. And I don't know, I'm very curious to see where this whole psilocybin / Juul thing goes, because these are two issues that I believe are on the 2020 ballot. So I guess we'll see here, guys. But anyways, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for listening to the podcast. I think we're going to wrap that up for the night. Nico, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a blast. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us and bearing with the roughness we've had with the first episode. But I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Drop a like, guys, on the stream right now. Drop a comment. Make sure to subscribe. Hit the notification bell. And I'll see you guys in tomorrow's episode. Jdowns out.